Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families. Good evening, book lovers. At ABL, our mission is not only about celebrating and sharing fabulous Australian and Indigenous authored books of all genres with readers around the globe. It's about finding fantastic resources and information for authors looking to write their own book. What better resource than getting into the writer's room with some of those authors and asking them to share their experience? This is episode 133. I'm Veronica Strachan, aka V.E. Patton, author of picture books, memoir, non-fiction, self-help. So I'm interested to chat with both of our fabulous authors tonight and a little bit of fantasy and science fiction as well. And I'm joined by...
And I'm Laurie Bell. I am a bit of everything. I write science fiction and fantasy. I'm a blogger. I write short stories and flash fiction. And of course, your co-host today. And I'm coming to you today from Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country.
Which I forgot to completely say that I'm here on the beautiful Woiwurrung country as well, having just had that conversation before. So now our listeners tell us they love to hear what inspires a story and a writer, how they make it to the page and what happens next. So we are diving in to the writing worlds of Bronwyn Frazer and Adrian Emery, two non-fiction authors who have life-changing words to share and are so much more than writers. Would you like to introduce them, Laurie?
Yes. So I am going to jump in. I do have that in front of me in two ways, just in case I lost all of my technology today, but we are good. So I'll start with you, Bronwyn. So Bronwyn Frazer is an Australian writer, author, communications professional, and holistic clinical nutritionist. Through her words and work, she helps people to look at life differently and reframe challenges into opportunities of growth and inspiration. She has lived in America, England, and every state and territory of Australia. That is amazing. Bar Tassie, South Australia, and South Australia, sorry, and currently lives in Wentworth Falls within the Blue Mountains in New South Wales. Bronwyn has a Bachelor of Arts in Communications with a minor in psychology and a Bachelor of Health Science in Nutritional and Dietetic Medicine. Dietetic?
Yep, you did well. I should have said I'll do the medical ones, but no, you're in.
Oh, yes, that's true. And a special interest in social dimensions of health. Bronwyn is available for author talks, events, interviews, and as a contributor to news and media opportunities. And we also have the amazing Adrian Emery, author, entrepreneur, philosopher, environmentalist, and keen gardener. Adrian Emery has devoted his life to creating a new philosophy called LifeWorks, based on understanding the laws, principles, and codes that make life work easily, effortlessly, and successfully. He has developed a coaching modality called Tao Tuning, designed to assist others in finding their life purpose. And I might get you to assist me with that one, Adrian. Is it Ikagi? Oh, how do I pronounce that one?
Ikagi, the Japanese.
Ikagi?
Ikigai?
Ikigai. Thank you so much.
What gets you up in the morning?
Oh,
yes.
I kind of need some of that at the moment.
Yeah.
And
your purpose for life.
Oh, that's wonderful. I will actually ask you a bit more about that very shortly. And attuned to the flow of their inner destiny and fate. Emery also built Rustic Spirit in the Blue Mountains of Australia as a spiritual retreat for guests to come and experience the stillness. He currently lives just outside the Blue Mountains National Park with his partner Marianne in Seneca Can, was it?
Seneca Tan.
Seneca
Seneca
Tan,
Tan.
sorry. And a spectacular 10-acre botanic garden and ecosystem. That sounds gorgeous. Built over the last 50 years to demonstrate we can regenerate the earth. Wow.
Two fairly impressive people. Thanks, Laurie.
Amazing. And both in the Blue Mountains. I'm still floored by that.
That's it. So, Bronwyn, can you welcome and tell us whose traditional land are you on?
Yes, thank you. So I am on Darug and Gundagar country.
Beautiful. And Adrian, that goes for you as well.
Yeah, the same. Blue Mountains. It's
Which
a
we didn't
beautiful
realise.
Aboriginal area. Right?
Yeah, it is beautiful. I've done, hubby and I were up there doing some abseiling and all sorts of different things. And we were lucky enough to go with one of the traditional owners, and they do walks through the bush and show some of the carvings, the rock carvings are there, and talk about, the importance and the dreaming stories there. So it is absolutely beautiful, piece of our country.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a semi-cave on my property that's got the
Ooh.
handprints on it.
Fantastic.
It's,
yeah,
yeah,
beautiful.
quite a strong Aboriginal presence here.
It's beautiful.
Brilliant. Now, Bronwyn, you've lived everywhere except Tassie and South Australia.
Yes,
Tell us a little bit about those travels.
Yes, so I am from a very large family. I'm one of 8 children. And my parents were ahead of their time. They were very adventurous. And basically, I was born in Kyogle, New South Wales, which is on the border of New South Wales and Queensland, up fairly close to Byron Bay. And when I was 10, we moved from there to the Hunter Valley. And then I went to boarding school in Sydney. And then after that, I became a Rotary exchange student for a year in America. And then when I came back, the traveling just continued.
You had the bug, it was in the genes.
Yeah, it's in the genes. My entire family love travel. Amongst us, traveled around the world several times. And at one stage, half my family were overseas and half were in Australia. So
wow.
Yeah, I just love travel. I learn so much. Every time I go somewhere, I learn something new, meet incredible people. Yeah, and then, I come home and appreciate what's here as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously all of those lessons and everything that you've learned is part of your story that you're sharing in your book.
Yes, indeed. It's a big part of my journey has been the challenge of moving. And I worked out that I've moved at least 48 times.
Wow.
Which, yeah.
That is
Wow.
impressive.
I know. And some of the moving has been intentional. Some of it has just been a result of circumstances. So during COVID, for example, I had a series of changes. I left Sydney to travel up to Nambucca Heads as my intuition was telling me that my father was in the process of dying. So I left Sydney to spend, what ended up being 3 months up with my mum and dad in Nambucca. And then after my dad's death, I wasn't comfortable with coming back to Sydney. I wasn't ready to be back in the fast pace of Sydney. And so I made a decision to go and work and study up in Brisbane. And I got stuck in the lockdown up in Brisbane with a lot of other people from New South Wales. So I was in Brizzy, which was great. And then I went back to Nambucca for a few months and then back to Sydney, because in that 4-year period between my dad dying and the end of the COVID years, I was working full-time and studying full-time. And I was just trying to work out how to make things happen. I was doing the degree in nutrition and I needed to be back in a major city. I chose to come back to Sydney, but because my circumstances weren't suitable to be renting somewhere and because of the COVID situation, I ended up dog and cat sitting, which sort of took me all around Sydney. That was about 12 moves in itself.
Wow.
Yeah. So for me, I'm used to transitions. I'm very used to change, and I often choose change. I'm one of those people that prefers to make the change because of my choices as opposed to being forced into change. So in the book, there's lots of different situations where I've experienced something and then with reflection sort of thought, okay, I could have handled that a different way. But there's also been experiences shared in my book where I've literally been traveling and something really big has happened that has challenged me in the moment. But with reflection, I've always been protected, and I've always learnt something from that situation as well. So yeah.
Brilliant. Let's share your book blurb if we could.
Yes.
So Bronwyn's book is titled What If? And I think that is such a big question. Beautiful. But the subtitle is How to Reframe Challenges into Opportunities for Growth. So what if you could change outcomes for the better? What if you took back your personal power? What if you led by example and in doing so encouraged others to do the same? What if you learnt from your challenges and flipped them into opportunities for growth? In What If, you'll learn ways to look at challenging situations differently. You'll see that even though some experiences may have been painful, they contained a gift in disguise, as you've kind of alluded to a little bit there. This book will help you to look inwards to develop self-awareness and emotional intelligence, tap into your inner wisdom to reflect on what the challenge was about and how to reframe it into opportunities, create better feelings and outcomes by reframing what happens to you into this is happening for me, give you the courage to follow your heart and lead an inspired life, inspire positive change in you and your community. Learn, grow, inspire. Change needs to start with you before it can ripple out into the world in a positive way. When we are ready to embrace change and create personal shifts in thinking and ways of being for the better, we heal ourselves and we heal the world. So What If is your playbook for how to grow from past challenges and live an inspired, conscious life.
Wow.
Great, fantastic.
Isn't it? Yeah, Adrian, you can
Oh,
see the
thank you.
synergies with your work, can't you? Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically saying the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And which is why it was such an easy match to put you two together and share these obviously such compelling messages and your lives, with our listeners. So fantastic. Adrian, let's jump over to you. I'm going to read the blurb of Tao Tuning, if you would, and then I'd love to talk to you about what inspired you to put the words or your messages on paper. So here's the blurb for Tao Tuning, the art of flow. So Tao Tuning has the power to transform lives by encouraging readers to pursue their passions, turn back to nature, and embrace the timeless principles of Taoism. In this non-fiction book, you'll learn how to live in the zone of flow, optimizing life's potential, master the mechanics and metaphysics of flow, discover your soul, spelt two different ways, everybody, purpose for this lifetime, ride the wave of your destiny to success and happiness, align the three essential forces, let's do that again. Align the three essential forces of fate, destiny, and daily life. Become a master practitioner of Tao Tuning to surf the cosmic waves and to lead a meaningful and fulfilling life filled with joy, wonder, and ease. Bring it on, Adrian. A life filled with joy, wonder, and ease. And you're giving people the recipe for, working that way. So can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to put the story into words or put your
Well, I'd
story?
like to pick up where we left off. What if everything we have been told is wrong?
Yeah.
So I like to say we live within a paradigm, and I'll start with a little story of two fish swimming on a beautiful, clear, crystal morning, and one fish says to the other one, "Nice water today," and the other fish says, "What water?" So we're not aware of the air that we breathe unless it becomes polluted. We're not aware of the belief system that we have all inherited via our genome, our genealogy, our heritage, our history, etc. And I believe that what if it is a misunderstanding or an error? In other words, I think we've been brought up to believe that life is hard, that it's a struggle, that life on earth is some sort of purgatory or penance, and that life is a means to another end. In other words, to get to heaven or to get somewhere apart from being right here now. I guess I'm saying is I think the purpose of life is its own purpose, and the purpose is to be here now, to enjoy life. And that once you embrace that, there is a natural flow, which is the chi or the Tao, and that facilitates or carries you along in its power and in its palm. So life can be easy, life can be hard, depending on our perspective and what happens. So it is what if, reframing, rather than looking at the glass half empty or looking at the negative. Once you change your attitude to acceptance and to flowing with what is, then you have that much more agency and power in order to ride the wave as opposed to resisting it. So to come back to your question, the reason that I write is that I believe we live within this huge misunderstanding, and that when we clear that misunderstanding to rightful understanding, life can be much more joyous.
Fantastic.
Beautiful.
And Bronwyn, what inspired you to put your compelling message on paper? Wow.
Oh, yeah. So my scenario was, so I'm actually quite a resistant author, probably as opposed to Adrian. I was inspired to write the story. Well, the information came to me in a very different way. It came very fast on a series of Sundays over a month. I was living in Sydney in the Lower North Shore at the time, and I was living without a car, but that was doable in that part of Sydney because public transport's so accessible and I could walk everywhere. And I was renting a car, taking back every Sunday, and on my way back from dropping off the car to walking the 5 kilometres home, I started getting inspiration for this book, but it was very direct. It was the question, answer, that sort of thing. So that happened every Sunday for at least 4 weeks in a row, but only on the Sunday. So it was very, like I call it a download, but it's sort of like just came out of nowhere. I think though, in essence, the inspiration for the book, my life has led a whole series of changes, challenges, and very much what Adrian was talking about. You know, the opportunity for me has always been, do I feel like a victim, or do I pick myself up and shake it off? Do I learn from a situation and choose to see the positives? And that has very much been the tone of my life. Like, there's been so much change, and some situations have been so much harder than others. But yeah, life is a series of journeys, detours, whatever you want to call it. And it's up to us to be in the moment. It's up to us to make the best of everything. And sometimes those situations take quite a bit of time after we've got through the grief, potentially the wounding, depending on the scenario. But yeah, I don't know. There's so much inspiration that feeds into my story, including one of the stories in the book early on in the book, I mentioned that I was bullied quite badly at school, in primary school, and that was the first time I considered self-harm, actually potentially killing myself. So that was a big moment and a big choice where I need to make a decision after that particular situation happened to do a lot of forgiveness work towards the people that had, I guess, directed that energy towards me. But I'm sharing that story because that was a big challenge that came to me fairly early on in life. And I know that that's a common experience for a lot of children, sadly. But back in 2017, at the end of 2017, when this information was coming to me, there was a very big upsetting story that was in the media, and it was about a little girl called Dolly who I think she was maybe 14 at the time, maybe slightly older, a country girl who was being bullied on social media. Dolly was the Kubra Hat mascot, and she was a beautiful little girl, but the bullying was so intense that she decided to take her own life. And that's a really big, that story and my early situation, plus a whole range of other things, has just influenced the book, What If, to just try and get that message out there, to be kinder to people, like to just, like, we never know what another person is going through, and you know, we need to look at our own selves as well as to is this a projection of my hurt? Is this, you know, is this something I need to work on for myself? And yeah, just like I've just written down some notes, just like one of the messages is take back your personal power and find your voice, and with the information that you've learned through the challenges and the changes, use that to contribute in a positive way to your communities. So that's a lot thrown into one question, and I do apologise.
No, it's all good. Laurie.
Well, I was actually going to then pass on to Adrian. So with your novel, how did you go about putting that together in your retreat
Probably
there
quite
that
the
you have?
opposite. I've been working on, look, when I was very young, and I think for all of us, it starts when we're very young. I used to look at life, and I used to look at my parents' friends, seeking a role model, seeking for somebody who I thought, yeah, that makes sense for me, because life actually didn't make sense to me. You know, the Western paradigm just somehow or other, and I'm talking about very young, maybe 4 years old. And I could just see, no, there's something wrong here. It doesn't really add up. It doesn't work for me. I need to find. And I used to think, well, what if I was an ancient Inca or an ancient Persian or an ancient Roman or Greek or whatever? I would have different set of beliefs, a different paradigm. And so I was always able to sort of, like sliding doors, have this alternative point of view and go, well, it's just a construct, you know, it's just this Judeo-Christian ethic. And I was brought up a Catholic, so I went through the whole thing. But I was always searching for, I believed that life had more to give and would work a lot better, that there was, as I said before, there was something wrong. So it wasn't an instant thing. I mean, I'm now 70 odd, so I'd say I've been working for 70 years on this alternative philosophy, which I call life works, because I believe that life does work. I believe that life can be, you know, we know when something works. For example, we don't get on a vacuum cleaner and expect to fly around the world. There's a functionality to things. We know when our cars work, we know when our computers work, we know when things work, and we know when they don't work. And I think we also all know when our life is working and flowing and having what I call blue sky days, or when our life is not working and we're having bad hair days. So we've all experienced, and I think we all want that functionality in our lives. But the interesting thing is that in our whole education system, there's never been a course called Life 101, where we are taught how life works. And I believe that in the West, we don't know. We've studied everything from outer space to microscopic particles to everything, but we've never really studied life and gone, these are the principles, these are the codes, these are the laws that make life work. And if you just obey these laws and live your life in harmony with natural law, then your life will work a lot better. So I've pretty much devoted my whole life to trying to understand those laws, finding them, do they exist, what are they, and then putting them together in what I'm calling a new philosophy, which does make your life a lot more joyous, makes you a lot better, going back to kindness. I mean, that is one of the key principles that we have definitely lost in this society as human beings. But if you are just kind to yourself, kind to other people, kind to nature, kind to the dogs and the cats, kindness is a very, very important key. And one of those things that we have to do, yet it's very interesting that it's almost, what's the word, chic, or to not be kind, going back to the bullying. Bullying is such a huge thing now. Why do we do it? Why do we want to be unkind to each other? Road rage, all this, the wars, the murder, all these sort of things are really just symptoms of an unkindness within us, of violence and aggression. And to me, that is just a symptom of my life is not working. If I'm angry, if I'm unhappy, if I'm distressed, it's really normally and usually a symptom of me being a victim and then lashing back out at the world because I feel that the world has somehow done something wrong to me, as opposed to when you do take back your power and when you do take back your, what I call agency, meaning that you really 100% know that you create your own reality, there is no one to blame. There is no one to lash out at. If something doesn't work, you need to sit and look at yourself and go, okay, well, what did I do wrong? How can I improve that? How can I make it better? How can I learn and become a better human being by being kind to myself? I think so if we love ourselves more, if we honor ourselves more, then I think we will give that to others. Whereas again, in the Judeo-Christian ethic, we're taught not so much to love ourselves, but to love others. And I don't think that works. I think you can only give what you've got. You can only give money to charities if you've got it. You can only give love if you've got it. I like to say that, if you think of a thimble or a cup or a lake or an ocean, each one can only contain so much water. So how much love can you hold? How big is your receptacle, and how much love, therefore, can you give?
That's beautifully put.
Yes. Oh, we are going everywhere this evening. Adrian, can I ask you what attracted you to, the Tao and Taoism then? What was it about that that rang those bells?
Before, well, okay, going back when I thought, okay, this Western paradigm, and you got to remember that I'm a very young child. Obviously, I didn't use those words or even understand what I was doing. So I decided to study all the religions, all the philosophies, and just basically read everything I could. What attracted me to Taoism was that it's not atheistic, but it doesn't believe in a God as a person. So the Tao, even the fact that it is the Tao, is a universal law. It still is divine. It still is creative. But I believe that whereas it says that man was made in the image of God, we have actually made God in our image, meaning we have attributed a personality, this vengeful old man in heaven with a beard is a very human construct, So I don't believe, again, that we really understand what God is. So I wanted to find a word that was objective, non-personal, didn't have any negative connotations, and that's basically what attracted me to Taoism. And the other thing is that Taoism and modern nuclear physics are almost identical. And so more and more modern science is finding that this is really the way the world does work. And so a lot of ancient mysticism, not necessarily just Taoism, but a lot of the really old ancient religions and modern science are basically saying exactly the same thing. So we now, as a race, are discovering the principle, the codes, all those things that I am talking about, but they are diametrically opposed to Newtonian physics, which is the paradigm within which we live. So the Tao is a very interesting concept in that it does have a divinity, but the divinity is not personified. So it's very hard to bastardize it, if I can put it that way. You know what I mean? And the other thing is that, yes, if you want to take back your power, you need to realize and accept that you are actually divine. Okay, so you can't, because the other thing that we do in the West is we like to blame God, blame the devil, see ourselves as victims, as this football in this giant cosmic football match being kicked around. And so that's a big way in which we lose our personal power. Whereas Taoism basically says you create your own reality. You need to learn how to create it better. There are no excuses. There are no victims. It's what you do that you have to come to terms with, and that's how you learn. So basically, life is a learning process. And when you get that and you apply yourself to it, you can very quickly learn how to become a better human being, how to improve your life, and how to do good.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Laurie.
I was actually going to ask a question for both of you. I think with that message of self-reflection comes through so strongly in both of your works. What do you see as those that process of self-reflection and looking at yourself, in what way are you seeing that come through in your work for putting that message out into the world? Bronwyn, do you want to start? I hate to put you on the spot, but sorry, that was a really esoteric question. Self-realization, what does that mean to you?
So is that the question, or
self-reflection, I guess, is the question. It's when you're telling people to reflect and look at themselves, what are you hoping that they're doing?
Yeah. So I guess so, because I was a younger child in a large family, I had lots of teachers. I had my parents, of course, like everyone. And then I had my older brothers and sisters. And I learned very early on that certain behaviors get certain reactions. And I myself was a very strong personality, which didn't necessarily always go down well. So there were times where, I guess, when I look back on situations becoming a teenager and then early 20s, where to be honest, I'm a bit embarrassed by some of the things that I've done in my life. I feel that my parents were, particularly my dad, was very emotionally intelligent. And he, through his actions, he very much helped guide the person that I am. But from a young age, I guess, having the older brothers and sisters, for some reason I was very good at reading body language, and yes, I could interpret reactions, good or bad. And then because I had so much change from a fairly young age into, well, it's just continued basically. But I've been in so many different situations with different people from different backgrounds, Yeah, all different philosophies, different religions, traveled a lot. So I learned from people, and I've learned about my impact on other people. The traveling has opened me up to so many different ways of being that I don't know. Maybe because I studied psych with my first degree, and that was a bit of a placeholder for examining the different philosophies as to how people think, why people do what they do. I'm not really sure. All of those things influenced, my ability to be able to self-reflect. A lot of reading, a lot of different philosophical reading as well. But then with my work in communications, I've worked with executives and CEOs. So I've actually been the person behind the scenes trying to guide them to be a better person, which has been very tricky with some personalities. And in the work sense, in the corporate environments that I've worked in, and also as a journalist as well, you get feedback all the time. And I think that's, for me, it's been a big learning curve. There's been times when I haven't necessarily agreed, I guess, but I've wanted to put my point forward. And then I've been willing to hear other people's sort of information and takes on it as well. So I don't know that I've answered your question, to be honest.
but it's been a great response.
It has been,
that's right.
absolutely.
It's a continuous self-reflection. I would never say I get everything right. In my book, I don't say, look, just because I'm putting this information out there, this is what you have to believe. I'm just giving you an opportunity to perhaps look at things from a different angle, because a lot of people that perhaps haven't experienced so much change, they get really rocked when they have a challenge and they potentially see it as the end of the world. But I guess part of what Adrian's saying, and very much what I say in the book, is if you can come at it from a different angle and potentially see the opportunity, then it's actually a very empowering situation. I think more people need self-reflection. I think it would actually be a much better world if people took responsibility for their words and actions. And it's not about people beating themselves up. It's just about, sometimes I say things and then think, oh, that didn't come out very well, or but it's a continuous learning.
Adrian, self-reflection for you?
Yeah, look, I highly recommend, totally agree. There is a big first of all, self-reflection is the key. I think it is the key to spiritual growth. I think it's the key to happiness, and I think it is the key to understanding. Unfortunately, we live in a very cloned world, social media, mass media. We are being fed a narrative, whether people want to accept that or not. We're becoming very gullible. I read recently, like you, I do write a blog, and quite recently I wrote that the only antidote to the deep state is deep inner reflection. In other words, you need to learn to think for yourself. And as Bronwyn said, it doesn't mean, a lot of people get confused between reflection and beating yourself up. It's, one of my favorite sayings is have the courage to join the dots. In other words, be able to be brutally honest with yourself. But it doesn't mean beating yourself up. It doesn't mean that, this negative thinking, the yammer yammer of the mind, that is not self-reflection. That's just the mind going stupid. Self-reflection, on the contrary, is this ability to look objectively at yourself, as I said before, with kindness, with love, but with brutal honesty, so that you're not bullshitting. You can see, because that's the only way you can learn. So self-reflection to me is the key. Unfortunately, there is less and less of it. I do agree that there must be times for solitude. I've spent a lot of my life as well counseling, and I say to people, you need to be able to take yourself out for dinner and sit at a table on your own and totally enjoy your meal. Now, that means without a phone, without a laptop, without anything, because that's going to bring up all your shame, all your guilt, all as people looking at me, what's wrong with me? In other words, you need to learn to love yourself, and you need a lot of solitude. One of my themes in the retreat is disconnect to reconnect. We need to disconnect digitally because the average person is now spending up to 10 hours per day on some sort of monitor, whether that's your phone, whether that's a laptop, whether that's watching television. That's a lot of time. And not a lot of people. Sorry, going back to the question about Taoism, Taoism is all about this ability to introspect, to meditate, to go within to what is called the inner law of your being. So if you are trying to find the truth out there, you're never really going to find it. And out there can be a religion, can be a philosophy, can be media, can be society. It doesn't really matter. It's still out there. It's not authentic for you. If you have that ability to turn within and to understand who you are, what your inner law is, what your inner truth is, and you can only find that via that process of introspection. To me, it's not even really a thinking process. It's not sitting there and, thinking. It's more of being able to really, really go quiet, turn within, meditation, mindfulness, walking in nature, and just being aware. As you said before, Bronwyn, you're walking back and all of a sudden that inner truth, whether you want to call it a download, whether you want to call it channeling, whether you want to call it divine inspiration, really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's a truth coming from within you, and it has an authenticity to it. It has a ring to it, and you know it, as opposed to regurgitating something that you've heard somewhere else. That's just information. That's just data. That is not your truth. When you discover your own inner truth, you're unshakable. It's a bit like a samurai wrestler that is so solid and sits within their own gravity and their own weight that you can't move them. Your inner truth needs to be so unshakable that, as Bron was saying, it doesn't matter what life throws at you. It doesn't matter if there's a calamity. We all are going to go through those events in our lives. It's just, how do we respond? How do we react? How do we come to terms with dealing with that without losing our own inner truth and our own authenticity?
Nicely put.
And if any of my
Wow.
students are listening, that's one of the reasons why I always ask them to journal in whatever way, shape, or form they need, but to just get their thoughts down and then to look at them further down the track, to come back and go, what was I thinking then? How was I behaving then? What was I doing?
Journaling
So,
is very important, but very different to a
really
diary.
important. Oh, yeah. No, I have journaled, for a long, long time, and I just find it, wow, who was that person? And look how far they've come.
I think with writing, that's exactly what you're all saying. And with writing, you do internalize and you find your voice to put into whatever the story might be, and to sit in that center and that quietness, and the story comes to you. It's amazing that sitting down and just that internal focus with yourself, which is you telling yourself the story. So I find that writing is it's a beautifully way you've just worded that was just absolutely fantastic, because that's how I see just in general writing, particularly fiction, non-fiction, just writing in general, reading another person's words. It's them sitting there in their self, telling themselves that importance of the story.
Yeah,
words are incredibly powerful.
and I think that going back to the question that you were both asking before, where does writing come from, or what impels you to write in the first place? And I say this all the time, you know, if you're a great composer, you just have to compose. If you're a great painter, you just have to paint. You're not painting to sell. You're not composing to sell. If you're a writer, you just have to write, you know. I know myself that I feel, and it could be journaling, it could be blogging, it could be a novel. It doesn't necessarily matter what it is. It can be for you. It doesn't need to be for anybody else. But writing is an incredible vehicle for personal clarity. I think that if you have that ability to get it down onto paper, and the other really interesting thing about writing is it's the first stage of manifestation, because it's going from ideation to the material plane, because you're getting it down on paper, and therefore it is in the world. And once it's in the world, it is real. And in that process of you allowing that to flow through you, I don't know, it's just an incredibly empowering, clarifying process, and you get to the end of it and you feel really good.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Bronwyn, about communications and journalism? Obviously, some really helpful skills to take into writing. Tell us how that helped you morph into putting putting words into a book, because obviously, you know, writing other ways is a little bit
skills.
different.
Sure. So I guess first up, I want to share that that when I was in primary school, I didn't think I was a writer. I didn't think that I was very good at writing. And that was, at the time, looking back at my younger version of myself, that was me telling myself that, because the style of writing we needed to do at the time was creative writing. And I realize now, as an older person, that my strength is in non-fiction work. So in journalism, and also in my various roles within communications and public relations, which has included health writing and launching a new fathers health pilot for New South Wales Health. Like I've done some really big chunky pieces of work which has involved lots of different styles of writing, everything from advertising to media releases to web copy to social media short chunks, to CEO and politicians, like speeches for politicians, and so many other things. So I sort of started out thinking I wasn't a writer. Then I somehow came into being a writer through my career. And I've been forced into doing different styles, which then has actually helped me to perfect the ability to write, to take really complex topics and simplify it. As Adrian was talking about before, helping people join the dots between this, and this sort of. And so in my book, what I've done is I've used a lot of my communication skills to take some complex and very emotional subjects and try and simplify it. And the book is purposely very each chapter in the book, or each insight in the book, is very short and sharp, but hopefully gets across the powerful message. The book itself is quite a thin book, and that is a reflection of the way that I write, which is very much my principle is around keep it simple, keep your communication simple, to try and get the message across to as many people as possible. And my communications background and also journalism has helped me refine the way that I write to simplify things. So it's everything. I believe that everything that we do, everything we experience, leads to the next step. It helps form us as a person, but it also adds to our abilities. Nothing is ever lost. Nothing that we do is ever, for the wrong reason. Everything combines to help us with what I believe we're meant to be doing. And then, so hopefully that explains it, but I don't know if you've got a copy of the book. I feel a bit bad if you don't. Because I'm trying to explain it. It's very simple, but in the simplicity, for me, that's the gold. It's like if I lose people in what I'm trying to say, with my writing, I'm so much better at my writing than I am with doing interviews. But yeah, it's just like the communications and the journalism skill set has taught me how to refine my thinking and to make it simple so that hopefully it gets out there to as many people as possible.
Fantastic.
Nice.
Now, I'm conscious of the time, and we haven't actually asked you about your writing process necessarily. So, Adrian, tell me, so much obviously goes into your writing and research and your life experience and all of those things, but do you have a process for sitting down and getting the words into a document?
Yeah, definitely, particularly if I'm writing a novel. Look, I have what I call my ideal day. I get up very, very early, usually before dawn. I like to be awake and meditating, waiting for the first bird, whatever time that is. So at the moment, that could be 5 o'clock. And then I'll spend a couple of hours in the garden. This is an ideal day if I'm at home.
Yep.
And then I really like to be sitting here at my desk by 8:30, in which I'll write. And then I'll write from 8:30 to 2, maybe something like that. So that would probably be a chapter. If I'm doing a book, today I did a blog. I'll try and do a post. But as I said before, I don't necessarily journal every day, but and that could be anything from a very, very short and concise 1 page to something much longer. But usually, as I said before, it's like it's like a download. It's not really me writing, although I guess it is. But even at the moment with Dao Tuning, I'll just open it at random in the morning and just read it. And sometimes I think, wow, did I write that? And then I realize, well, no, I didn't really write it myself. It's like you've got to be humble and you've just got to get yourself out of the way and allow it to come through. But there is definitely, I believe, a process of purification or preparation whereby by the time you actually start to write, you're not there. And so you're not interfering in that flow. I don't think that you can just be rushing around doing a whole lot of stuff and then sit down and write if you're doing a book. I mean, maybe journaling or little pieces. But if I'm definitely working on a book like I am at the moment, then I will. And I may not be able to allocate that every day, meaning I can't necessarily say every day, wow, I've got from 8:30 to 2 to sit at my desk and write. But if I don't, then I don't try and mess it up, meaning I won't sit and write for 5 minutes. If I know that if I've got a lot of things to do and I don't have that parcel of time, then I just don't. So I'll wait for the next day, which could be the next day, or it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks. It just depends on my life and what's happening. But I know that in the meantime, I'm working on where I'm at in the book, where I'm up to. And so I might get a download, as Bronwyn said before, about where it's going. And so by the time I sit down to write, there's a sort of a meandering path ahead of me. And sometimes I'll actually do all the chapters. And so I've got a really good outline. With this one I'm doing at the moment, I'm not doing it that way. I'm trying to probably ad-lib it a bit more, be a little bit more guided in what's coming through. But I think you've got to have a discipline, when you ask me to answer those questions. My advice to anybody who wants to write is you've got to have the discipline to get to that point where you can do that. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't not, if I'm doing a book, I could not write for 6 weeks. I mean, you're just going to lose the thread, and then you're not going to be able to plug back in. So I might be able to miss a few days. I might be able to miss a week, but pretty much I've consistently got to get back in there to keep it going. And I'd probably, you know, I would want to be finished by the end of the year. So I'll give
That's
myself
a good goal to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And Bronwyn, your process.
Yes. So I'm a little bit of a slug. Sorry, Adrian. I sleep in. I really enjoy my sleep. So I try and get a really good night's sleep. Then I get myself up and have breakfast, and then I meditate, and then I go for a walk in nature, which is normally about an hour. And then I sometimes will go and have a coffee, but I try to, on most days, be at my desk by 11, so quite a bit later than Adrian. But and then I focus for normally a couple of hours, and I do like a thought dump. I just write, and I try to work out like an outline for the book. And so when I do a thought dump, it's for a chapter at a time. And then I write everything, and then I come back and do a rewrite, and then I hand over to a professional editor. So yeah, I have learnt in myself that I need solitary time out in nature, and the meditation helps me so much to just come into myself and get my thoughts clear. So yeah, but like Adrian, I don't write every day, but on a good day, you know, I can easily write 1,000 or 2,000 words in about an hour. So yeah.
Yeah, when it's there, it's there. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? When the flow is there, and you can tell pretty much straight away. Like, I find if it's not there, there's no point in forcing it, because it's not going to come through pure, and it's you just,
Forcing
you know,
yourself.
interfering and
Yeah.
so I don't think you can force it.
No.
Because usually you end up crossing that out and editing it out anyway.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, what does the next 12 months hold for you, Adrian? What's your, you know, your aspirations? I know you said the end of this year you want this particular book done.
Well, the book I'm working on at the moment is called The Map Maker. And basically I am writing an alternative history of the last 500 years. And so I'm trying to join the dots between the medieval paradigm, which ended with the Black Plague, and then ushered us into what has been called, through the Renaissance, the Age of Reason, which we still live within, which is, as I said before, the Newtonian physics, you know, the great God of science, everything that we now live in this technocratic world, and showing people the yin and the yang, the dialectic opposites of how we got to where we are now as a society, with, you know, the surveillance state, Big Brother, all the things that are happening with the cancel culture, because I believe that we are about to go into a totally new paradigm, and that there are people who need to be what I'm calling explorers in consciousness, as opposed to the Christopher Columbuses and the Vasco da Gamas and all of those guys who were the map makers of the new world.
Like that.
So this book is for the map makers of the new world of inner consciousness. In other words, I really believe that evolution is no longer happening on the physical level. We're not going to grow a tail or, you know, a third ear or something like that. Evolution is now operating in inner consciousness. And as in all changes, there are the map makers and then there are the early adopters. So this book is very much a guide for where are we going. And I believe that in order to know where you are going, you need to know where you have come from. So it's a very philosophical, spiritual look at the last 500 years. Obviously I'm not worrying about dates and that, but I am looking at, okay, how did we end up where we are right now? What is the energy and the forces that led us, and what's happening? Again, like there's so much happening on the planet right now with Trump and politics and economics. But if you transcend all of that and look at it from a very, very high cosmic spiritual perspective, it becomes actually quite simple. And it is all about personal sovereignty. It is all about personal freedom. It is all about where we are going as a species. I believe that if we don't make that transition, we are extinct. So it's a pretty important, for me, going back to why do I write, I think it's really, really important. I think there's a very high probability that we won't make it. And I don't think life is worried about that at all. It'll just choose another species. I don't think humanity is that unbelievable. I mean, we think we're unbelievable. We think we're very important. But at the end of the day, nature and the earth will go along very nicely without us. It's just, do we want to be? We are the dominant species, but that doesn't give us the right to totally stuff it up and to pollute and to take. So there are a lot of lessons, I think, for humanity right now, to be humble enough to realize we haven't got it right. We're not in the right path. Going back to the kindness, we really need to change who we fundamentally are as individuals and as a species to earn the right to be that dominant thing. So, sorry, Map Maker is
all right.
all about, where are we going?
That's fantastic.
That's good. I can tell that your passion is there, and it's going to be
great.
another amazing book.
Yeah.
Bronwyn, tell us about your goals for the next 12 months. And yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I love what you've said, Adrian. I'm completely on board with what you're saying, so I get it. I'm currently working on I'm working on 3 books at the moment.
Wow.
So I have a children's book that should be out by April, and it's very much along the lines of trying to build a kinder and more conscious next generation. So that's very, very close. Yeah, so I'm waking up at night at all times of the night thinking about that book. And the book has got a wombat in it, so I'm having wombat dreams.
Lovely.
Yeah, which is it's quite different for me, but it's just wombat energy is very strong. It's coming from all directions at the moment. Yeah, so that is very close to my heart. But there's 2 other books that I'm also working on, and they're both for adults. And I am a crazy creative. I'm always writing. So it's sort of like, I guess because I've got a few projects on the go with those 2 books, there might be one day where I want to do a thought dump on one of those topics, and then I might deviate to the next. But hopefully they'll be out sort of September, October this year. I'm not quite sure. I know that I am a nightmare for a publicist because they normally like to have one book 1 year at a time, or one book every 6 months. But yeah, so it's a big year, lots of writing. If it happens that I need to do a detour, if something big happens in my life, that's okay. But that's touch wood what I've got planned at the moment. So
sounds like a good plan. Yeah. Where is the best place to find you online, Bronwyn?
Yeah, sure. So the best place is my website, which is Frazer with a Z.com.au. Yeah.
Excellent. All right.
Fantastic.
And Adrian, yourself, where can our listeners best
Yeah,
get in touch with you?
adrianemery.com. And it's all in the website. And I am doing a blog. I try to do a blog once a month, which is a bit of a satirical, tongue-in-cheek, but also from a higher spiritual perspective of what's going on. Just so giving people little tidbits, I suppose. So it might be a commentary on, Trump, but also I try to bring philosophy into it. And so, encouraging people to really look at what is going on the planet rather than just accepting the narrative.
Yeah,
of
so
the
important.
mainstream media.
Yeah.
But yeah, adrianemery.com, and that is then has got all the links and all that sort of stuff.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
So first of all, thank you so much to Bronwyn and Adrian for taking us on this incredible journey, philosophical, esoteric, and I really love all of this work. And as a bit of a I'm a coach as well, and having written in this area, I guess we'll say, for a little while, it is lovely to hear people brave enough to share their alternate philosophies and brave enough to get vulnerable and share their stories with others. So thank you very much for your time tonight. And
Appreciated.
yeah,
And you're both so passionate about your work, and that's
yes,
what's
yes,
wonderful
it
to
was just
see.
lovely to sit and listen and let the
Yeah, it
words
really
just flow
is.
over me. Yeah. But of course, we like to finish off our sessions with our entreaty to all our listeners to remember to
To
Read
more
more
Aussie
Aussie
books.
books.
Oh,
Yes.
fantastic. That was one of our best ever. Thank you
I
so
think
much,
so.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank
Bye for
you.
now.
Bye.
Yep.
Let's meet again when magic happens.